На следващата лекция от нашата академия за драматургично писане, тя ще бъде на Signa Köstler. Веднага подключвам на английски, защото лекцията също ще бъде на английски. Надявам се всички да разбират английски. Welcome to the next lecture of our Summer Scriptwriting Camp, which will be held by Signa Köstler. And I'm very happy that she is here again. She was in Bulgaria 2009, I think. 2008, at the Varna Summer Theatre Festival. And thank you to be here again in Bulgaria. The name of the lecture is Constructed Reality or Deconstructed Fiction, Immersive Strategies in the Work of Signa. Signa Köstler is the founder and the artistic leader of the group Signa, together with her husband, Arthur Köstler. This group exists since 2001, and they have already made more than 20 performances.
38.
38, okay. Thank you, 38. And they were playing in many cities, countries, on the most important festivals in the German-speaking area, like Theatertreffen or Wiener Festwochen. There were like hundreds of professional and non-professional artists involved in their productions, and they always work site-specific, and some of their performances have a duration like for more than 200 hours non-stop. Signa Köstler is a director, performer, set designer, costume designer, and definitely a disobedient artist. So enjoy the lecture.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Sylvia. Thanks for coming. Thanks for having me here. As many of you are not familiar with my works or the works of Signa, I will start by showing you a film. I don't know if you'll be very much wiser after having seen it, but I think it will give you an idea of the aesthetics, of the atmosphere of our work. It's a film made during Kunstprozesse, not during the hours where the most audience was there, but in the hours in between. It shows approximately 1/5 of the set design and 1/5 of the participating performers. It was a project of 72 performers performing in 62 rooms. So yes, so I will ask my son to start the video now. Please turn down these lights entirely. Thank you. There seems to be a problem with the sound. Can somebody do something about it?
It has to be louder.
Come to a dramatic halt.
Maybe it's from the laptop.
At the same time, there has been an apparent disappearance of those insects which prey on ants, specifically mantises, beetles, millipedes, and spiders. If these conditions persist, they must inevitably lead to increases in ant populations.
Achtung, Achtung, eine Durchsage. Ein Wächter, bitte umgehend in den Laden. Ich wiederhole. Ein Wächter, bitte umgehend.
in den menschengestapelten kleinen Straßen. Sie gingen, an sich leidend, vorüber. Wer sollte ihn da schon sprechen? Ihn, der ein für sich und nicht ein Mitleidender war. An Mitleidende glaubte in diesen Tagen schon keiner mehr. Bis sie ihn fraßen, den Letzten.
Yes, so at one point, quite early in our career, we found out that it's quite impossible to document what we are doing, and we started looking at these films we made and the photos more as a kind of work in itself. And when not knowing our work, I suppose that you could get the wrong impression of what we are doing. What we did here was that we froze everybody pretty much, and we made a drive-through. But going through one of our works as an audience, everyone is actually alive, and you will be talking to everybody. This particular performance was inspired by, based on the trial by Franz Kafka, and every audience would be prosecuted. And by coming into this performance, which was 6 hours every evening, your file, your case would be opened, and you would have, everyone would have an individual schedule for going through different departments. Here you saw a few of the departments, only a few. You also saw one of the courtrooms. And as an audience, during these 6 hours, you would have yourself to decide what you would do in the breaks between the appointments, and which appointments you would choose to go to, which not. You had yourself then to find lawyers, which were also in the buildings. Maybe you had an appointment, maybe you didn't, and you could then, of course, come back as many times as you wanted, and your file, your court file, which you would be carrying around with you, would become thicker and thicker with documents. You didn't know, of course, what you were prosecuted of, as in the novel by Franz Kafka. And you also had the possibility to continue trying to work on your case outside of the hours of the performance. The building was always open. That means some of the offices were always open. You could come for extra negotiations in the courtroom, or the employees of the court or the lawyer could visit you at your workplace, in your home, call you, and so on. So the performance would also stretch out of the house. This is an extension of our format that we've been working with before. And after, especially after. This particular project is from 2010, right? Or was it 11? I think 10. Yes. 10. It was the first project where I collaborated with Sylvia. Anyways, I will now tell you a little bit more the basics of who are we. So, because you don't know this, all of you, I think. My name is Signa Köstler. I started developing this format in 2001. I do not have a theater background. My background is an academic one. I'm an art historian with also with the side subjects in film and media. I'm only a bachelor. I stopped my university studies after a few years. and I wanted to do installation art, and I set out doing this in 2001, and I was quickly quite dissatisfied with doing this, because creating a room and leaving it didn't make much sense to me. And after my first and last installation art project, I decided that I would be part of it myself. Whatever I would do, I would stay in it every hour that it was open to the public, and engage with the public. It didn't cross my mind that it would have anything to do with theater. It really had not crossed my mind at that point, but it was very quickly absorbed by theater institutions, and that's also where we started getting our funding, which was of course rather meager in the earlier years. Since 2004, I've been teamed up with Signa Köstler, who also quickly became my husband. He was an actor at first. So I am half of the artistic collective, which is pronounced Signa in Germany, but it's the same as my first name, which is pronounced Signa, which is the Danish pronunciation, means sign in Latin, and therefore makes some kind of sense, I presume. So today I'm going to talk to you about how to write plays without writing scripts. It's quite a funny thing that I've been invited to a script writing camp, because I never wrote a script in my entire life. That doesn't mean that I didn't write anything. I've written very, very many fictional frame stories, very many concepts, backgrounds, and so on. But I've never actually written a script, apart from maybe a few speeches held as part of these performances. So I'm going to try to tell you what our work is about. What is this format that we have developed, and how do we create these pieces? In order that you will not be too bored, there's a slideshow running behind. It is not as long as I will be talking. There are pictures from many different shows, and it will give you a little bit of an impression. I was told by my last lecture that I should give trigger warnings. That seems to be modern, so here it is. Some pictures may be rough. Also, the video is coming later on. No, it won't. Right. So, what is Signa? I started, as I said, out in 2001, creating rooms and deciding that I would incorporate myself in these rooms. It should be rooms that the audience could engage in, rooms to live in, where I as an artist would live along with others, and where the audience could also spend a lot of time. My first project was in 2001. It was called Twin Life, and I think that says, the title says a lot about what the work is about. A simulation of reality, but not reality as we know it. I don't make realism as such. It's always it always has an otherworldly quality to it, something which is strange. You feel you have transgressed in another world, but also there are a lot of details which point to it being real. Food being cooked, dirt that you can open every drawer and there will be everything in there. So it's very cryptic. It's very detailed. This first project already was the concept of the format roughly, but I didn't know much at the time, and I think I've been working very much on developing this format ever since. We have approximately, as I said before, made now 38 productions, depending on how you count them, because some of them were continued. So it was a play taken in several places, taken to several places, like for instance the one that I played here in Varna in 2008 was a traveling show which also played in an abandoned hotel in Odessa. We have been playing in, like Sylvia said, in quite a lot of places. So our collaborators are typically big German theaters, like to name a few, Berliner Volksbühne, Schauspielköln, Deutsche Schauspielhaus Hamburg, or festivals like Wiener Festwochen, Berliner Theatertreffen. As you can see on the pictures and of the video, the performances are very elaborate, especially the set, and therefore rather costly. It takes a lot of time to create them, and therefore they're not cheap, especially not because of the many involved, even though they're not well paid. The format you should imagine as this, and now I want you to ask questions if there's something you don't understand. And especially I think it's hard to imagine when you haven't seen any of these works, so please engage in conversation with me and let me elaborate on it if you don't understand. Good. Even though we work with these big houses, with these big festivals, we have never performed on the big stages. We always work site specific, meaning that we work in abandoned buildings that can be anything from old hotels, institutional buildings, industrial halls, schools, and so on and so forth. The audience arrive at these places and they walk through. So the format has many variations. Sometimes they are led, and the performance will take 5 hours, and they are in a group, and they will be taken, they will follow a schedule, and they will be led by someone from room to room, and there they will interact, I don't like that word, with the characters being there, or they move freely, or a combination of the two. Sometimes they have a schedule. Sometimes the performances are very long, up to 10 days and nights, non-stop, where the audience can actually and sometimes will stay for this entire time. That means they engage in an everyday life in the play and sleep there, cook there, eat there, go to the toilet, all within the fictional framework. Then, of course, like I said, there are the formats that extend over or out of the buildings where the performances take place. Very often it will also function like that the audience come back every day after work on their way home, or something similar to this. Yes. The themes of the performances, if I should say something in general, they're very often exploring structures of power, working with things like what is the individual in a society, in a hierarchical structure, which is always there. What is fate and what is identity? How do we socially relate? And when the audience are taken in to this other world, this place where they are in a way also reduced. I don't know if you know what I mean by this, but by them traveling into another world, they also become something else. And because everything around them is very real, but at the same time everything is simulation, they are also transformed to something else, which means that they can behave in a different way. So this is a reflection of themselves for them, and it's a very good platform, a very good environment to raise questions about how do I relate in situations of power negotiation, in situations of abuse, in situations where freedom is not present or questionable. So this would typically be themes. So to name a few examples, of course now you've seen the court, psychiatric hospitals we have performed more than once, hotel taken over by military in a time of war, a whole village we once built with 25 houses inside a big industrial hall. This was the one that was in Schausbilkön, Die Erscheinungen der Martha Rubin, or the Ruby Town Oracle, which was later moved to Berliner Theatertreffen. And this village was a village under siege, and it was a non-stop show. Is it the light you want out? Yeah?
I'm sorry?
You want the light out?
No, everything's
Okay. And what did I want to say? Yes, I'm naming examples of the different themes. The last one that we did, we just finished it approximately 1 month ago. It was at the Wiener Festwochen Wir Hunde. It was about a society of people who felt like dogs born in human bodies, and them living in families with humans and making opening the doors to the public and saying we have a right to be dogs even though we are born as humans, and there are going to be a lot of us. And this whole question of if someone says I'm happy when I'm not free, I'm happy when I'm on a leash, is that then okay if someone is treating another human being as a dog, if the human being wants to? So to say it's often these questions of power and what is freedom and what is our responsibility to the fellow human being, and it's not that we have answers to these questions, but to me these are very fundamental questions about humanity. The stories mostly are created by us, meaning I write a basic frame story. It's rather rough. It's a skeleton. I write little biographies for every performer. I write the names, and then it's all developed on by the actors themselves. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we create these works, but how the actors create these works. But maybe before that, because now I've said a lot already, I'd invite you to ask some questions about what I've told. Yes, don't be passive.
Yeah, we are now for scriptwriting camp, but I saw this Us Dog performance in Vienna. I was impressed actually by the acting of the actors, especially the dog ones. Can you please, I don't know if it's now the time to say, but how you work actually with the actors?
Yes, I will gladly tell you about that. So a typical production of ours has 50 actors. That includes everyone who works in the production. So our bookkeeper is acting, our costume assistant is acting, everyone is acting. Everyone is also, or almost everyone, is living where we work. So we live collectively, and we develop collectively. And everybody is in a way also their own director. We have always 4 weeks of rehearsals, but not in one row. So we have typically 1 week of workshops, 1 week free, and so on. And when they arrive in a building which is more or less finished. They're given a room, they're given a name, they're given a few biographical details. And very quickly, they have to start the process of identifying with this character. And this starts often by writing. We sometimes work with automatic writing, with writing letters from the point of view of the character, then going over to small improvisations, which we very often take out in the city. So they're associating very quickly, of course, with the rooms, have rooms and drawers full of stuff. They develop stories to every little thing that they find, like every little hen, every little teddy bear that they find, and they have to know, like a real person, where is all this from? and then they have to go to Aldi, or they have to go to, that's a supermarket, or they have to go to church. They have to do all these things in the character, and this going out in real life, being the character, is a very good way of testing: is this believable, or is it not? Because we live together and we work very much as a group, there is a lot of also very much happens in the collaboration between the actors, spending many hours in character and talking to each other, communicating with each other about things that happen, things they do. It's very organic. We spend also, of course, an enormous amount of time just talking, sitting and talking and talking and talking, developing a fictional framework which is so dense that no matter what the audience will ask, there will come an answer, and it will not be contradictory to what other character will say. That they feel so safe that everything can happen spontaneously, or they can react to everything spontaneously. I think the key to the actors being very good is time, and you need time to identify. You need time to identify with the character. You need time to think everything over. It has to be your own, no matter if the role you play is some maybe not so sympathetic person, that you understand the motivation to the point where you will actually feel personally insulted if someone is insulting you. So and also I think another thing that that's very beneficial for the acting is that a lot of the actors are working practically on the set, spending time creating the rooms, helping with everything from sewing to painting, having a very close connection to the buildings. So when we create, questions to this so far, or is your question answered?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
One thing that I maybe should tell you about our actors is that they are not all actors, but there's also a common misunderstanding or misconception that none of them are, and it's a mixture. There are some, they are accountants, a lot are students, typically is theater, science, but there are also people who work with lawyers, with people of harbor logistics, I think basically any profession. That's not true, we don't have a policeman. And I don't distinguish. I couldn't even say for every one of our actors who's a professional actor or not. And it's not always an advantage having an actor's education for doing this kind of work, because very much that you learn in acting school is difficult to use in this kind of format.
Maybe you can tell us how do you choose the actors?
Yes. My father was, now he's a pensioner, but he was working with unemployed people, talking to a lot of people every day, trying to choose who would be good for which job. And I asked him how he can do that. How do you build an impression of a person? How do you know about a person from a small talk? And he said, there are all these tests developed. I don't use any of them anymore because the most reliable is intuition. And therefore, I think it's very much, for me, it's about meeting the people and talking about all kinds of things and random things. It's not about what it says on their CV so much as how do they work in a conversation, because basically our work is about direct contact, about conversation. And I think it's hard to say. It's very much based on intuition, but there are always things you don't see about a person. So now I've developed something new, which I've used in the last few projects, and that is the first day, meeting the people, just talking, like I would only do before. But then I have a so-called casting seminar on the next day, where I put the applicants through a lot of different situations. For instance, they get a task that they have to convince the other half of the applicants. One half has together to convince the other half of the applicants about something. Like, it has been decided now that all the citizens, everybody, should wear a uniform, always. Why is this good? You have to convince. Or it should be forbidden to cook in your own home. You are only allowed to eat from now on. Everybody will only be allowed to eat in restaurants. And so on and so on. They have to convince. This is one. The other is sitting in a circle and taking objects from a bucket and telling a story, and it goes on. Or another is totally free. They're in a prison and they don't know anything. They're just in a prison. They just have to start improvising from this prison situation. So I put them through all of these things. And between that we have evaluations, and they have little time to prepare these things, and we watch everything. And what is even more interesting sometimes than how they solve these tasks is how do they relate to each other and to the group between, even in the breaks. So you always feel a little bit mean when you do that, because you're watching them all the time. And it's actually all I need to write the characters. So I see them, I cast them, the next time I see them we start the rehearsals and they have their characters, and I've written it for the ones I chose based on that. That would then be less than half of the cast. The other half would be our so-called veterans, people who work with us again and again. We don't have a fixed ensemble, but we have a lot of people working with us again and again.
So you write the roles for the specific actors?
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
I wanted to ask you because I'm interested, because you create like, they're visually and emotionally, they're very strong, the space that you create. So would people have very extreme reactions? I mean, from the audience sometimes? Extreme in the sense like extremely rejecting, or extremely getting inside of the story?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
So can you like give some examples?
Some of the works have a very rough content. They're very controversial and provocative. Violently or sexually explicit works we've done, or works with like where it's emotionally very rough and people have very strong reactions to that. Yes. And it's not that's not always easy, but it's part of what we count with.
I was also curious about the audience, because it's such a non-structured, non-standard format for theater. Usually you pay your money, you go 2 hours, you sit there. Some people get up and they leave, and if you got 6 hours in an antagonistic sort of framework, then are people paying to be audience members, or are they, it's funded so that it's free for them, and how does that, I'm curious, do you lose people, and does that, if the thing goes on a long time, do you start looking at audience reactions and changing the piece as it goes?
People pay tickets, and actually it's not so nice, because now that we're in these big houses and big festivals, the tickets are rather expensive, and that of course means that the people coming are a certain clientele. Whereas sometimes we've done performances, they were out under a motorway bridge in the brim of the forest or something like that. Then people would just pass by, homeless and whatever. Here they pay, and some are this, I don't know what it's called, like they have a contingent. They have a...
Abonnents.
Yeah, that's also German. So, the ones that have this... subscription. So they have a number of tickets and they just come. These are typically the people to leave. But a surprising number of people actually stay till the very end. But there are always someone leaving in anger. The plays are never the same from one day to the next. So if we have a play playing 5 hours every night for 31 days, which is typical, then one day in the fiction will follow the next. So say you come on Thursday and you come on Friday. The characters, the roles will recognize you, and they will talk about that you also were there the day before. And on one day, one character has birthday, on another something else happens. So it's always different. But when we don't play non-stop, we also have evaluations every day. We talk before the play, we talk after. And I make adjustments if I find that things are not working, if there's something that can be better. So it will never be the same visiting the play the first day and the last day, and not even 2 days following each other.
How do the figures in the plays relate to their being figures and having like an audience in front of them? How does this engagement?
They don't have an audience in front of them. That's very important. The last one, it was Tag der offenen Tür. How do you say that in English?
Open door.
Yeah, open door. It was this society of people feeling that they were dogs trapped in human bodies, and their owners. They made open door, day of open door, or days of open door. And what they would have would be guests. So they would relate, like say you live in a collective, in a commune, and you decide, okay, we open up. So they relate, would you like coffee, blah, blah, I will tell you now about how we live here and so. And then things start happening. So it's really their visitors. In another play, like the psychiatric play, the performers would play doctors, some of them would be patients, and the audience would also be patients. They would get into patients' clothes and they would get their beds. And then you will relate as a doctor to a new patient, or as an actor playing a patient, okay, new fellow patient. So never now there is someone in front of me. And of course, just that it's totally clear, the fourth wall doesn't exist here. The audience are always present and we relate to them. So we don't just stand there and perform a text or something. If there's someone there, whether that person is passive or that person is asking questions or reacting in any way that we see, and we react to that, and that actually decides the mood all the time. And that's very, very tricky to make that work actually. And this is where I think we have to all the time work on how we can get that better, how we can control that, how we can link that situation.
Two unrelated questions. One, when you said you engaged, you wanted to be part of, so do you take a passive role yourself through the 31 days, 5 hours, or are you interacting as if one of the other audience members for every
No, I'm
performance?
acting.
Okay, you're one of that.
I'm just like any of the actors.
And creating, you write a template of a script for each of the characters?
No.
Okay, because I thought one would need some element of questioning if you really kind of
No,
engage.
I don't write a template. I write a short biography for them, and then I write 2 pages of questions. So they have like 5 to 10 lines.
Yeah.
You're called so and so, and you're in this family, for instance. Background so and so, very roughly. And then 2 pages of questions, and they have to decide all of that themselves. They answer the 2 pages of questions. They go back to me. I read it through. I like it, and maybe I don't like the details, and I say maybe change this, this, and this. It doesn't fit. And then we start connecting. Then I say, good. Now all of you, you're living in this society. You're living in the psychiatric ward. What shared memories do you have? Who knows each other from before? Who knows each other from the outside? And so on. And then they have to brainstorm. What can they remember from the shared past and so on. And then a lot of material develops. Like a script writing camp. They develop a lot together. And in the end, there will be many, many pages written, and also things not written down at all, just agreements, things that they have in this fiction experience together that they know. So if you ask one in the room in the basement, she can tell you a lot about maybe another role which is on the top floor, because there are connections like that. But if then the audience, or when the audience come in and they ask questions to a performer, it's not that I have written down what the answers should be. That comes spontaneously, but from that really, really dense fictional framework, which is partly written and partly spoken about. And to get the actors there, that's really a hell of a work. So we have to talk and talk and talk, and they have to read, and we have to do tests all the time to make sure that everybody knows it. So we have these tests that all the actors fear, where we're actually checking. We have spontaneous tests. So what's the name of the grandmother of him? And so, and and they have to know that. So, and I always tell them, this is just as important as you knowing your lines in a traditional script, and it's quite some stress.
And to what extent do you use fabula? Plot line within the audience moving around.
It's very different how we do it with the audience moving around. Sometimes I make this. Actually, it's so different. So people think it's always the same format. It's not. One time I made it very intricate.
Intriguing.
Not intriguing. Well, anyways, details. Master plan, where like a clockwork on the very minute where one character would move to where. I will show you a video from that later on. And sometimes it's really very, very free, and only the things that will be decided before are the things that are actually there in real life. Like I go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, then I have a break at that time. I do this and that, but nothing out of that. What doesn't work is like planning, now this person and this person has a fight. I don't like planning these things because this should be always spontaneous out of a situation. This is Tristan.
Does the story repeat the same every day, or is it?
No.
It's one long story that you plan.
It's
from
one
the
long.
beginning
It's
to
one
the
long
end.
story. So if the play is 31 days, it will be a 31-day story, and sometimes it will continue after the play has finished. There will still be the characters calling and emailing you. So we've been called stalker theater because we don't leave the audience alone.
So I have a question. How do you end your performances? Do you have something like final or Schluss?
It depends. For instance, the last one, this Days of Open Door, then it was the last one.
The last performance?
But then it was the last day of Days of Open Door. And then there was some audience, they came every day. So they were super sentimental. So they were like, what are you going to do now? And they brought like gifts and so it kind of generates also from the audience because they've been engaging so much. So everything was like hugging and.
And for the regular go-through, if you go there only once, you think of it of the audience entering and starting to see the show and finishing.
Yeah, and this is again, it depends on the show. Like maybe an example from a show called Svartsagen. I just have to see. Then I will show you a video of how it started. Give me that one. I want to see what time it is. Yes. I have a watch on my phone. So, it is now 7:15. No, 7:05. Then I
we
will
have 10 minutes.
Cool. I will show you a video, and that's from how a show started, and that was when the audience was still gathered. Yeah, we start now.
So, liebe Gäste, die Familien gehen jetzt in die Wohnung, wir machen es schön heimelig und gemütlich für Sie. Ich darf jetzt noch einige einleitende Worte zu Ihnen sprechen und uns zurechtnehmen. Ich möchte erst einmal einen lieben Freund vorstellen, das ist Herr Moses Theser, also man kann uns auf die Forum schauen wollen.
Sorry.
Herr Theser ist Fotograf, arbeitet im allgemeinen Krankenhaus.
Okay, this is not the name of the show. This is the logo.
Das kriegen Sie hin.
So this is the audience that gathered in the big hall.
Hier ist jetzt erstmal unser nettes Stern.
Planet Erde. Mein Zuhause, mein Ort. Eine Schönheit im Weltenmeer. Erde, ziehst du nur so an uns vorbei, wie ein Stück Rost, ein Stück Materie im geistlosen Raum, eine einsame Rakete, ein kalter Stein mit Kleber gehalten. Etwas in meinem Herzen sagt mir, es ist nicht so. Du bist doch mein Liebling, sanft und blau. Erde, fühlst du mit uns? Du hast doch in mein Herz gesehen. In meinen Adern fühle ich deinen Rhythmus. Deine Wolken, deine Winde, deine Stürme, deine Farben, deine Gerüche, dein Geschmack. Erde, sanft und blau, ich sage es von Herzen. Ich liebe dich.
Was ist mit allem?
So, liebe Gäste, die Familien drehen jetzt in die Wohnungen und machen es schön heimelig und gemütlich für Sie. Ich darf jetzt einige einleitende Worte zu Ihnen sprechen.
Okay, so he's now saying that now it's time for them to go to the apartments. Sorry, he's now telling them that it's time to go to the apartments and to visit the different families. So there are 6 different in this house. This was where the audience were gathered in the beginning. You could see them sitting in the middle. And then first there was this really bad PowerPoint explaining to them how these families, the 6 families, lived in this protected apartments because they were all having certain emotional problems. And the guy standing in the middle, that was a doctor caring for them. Sylvia was playing one of the 2 nurses, as you could see. And the audience had now listened to this very bad PowerPoint presentation, and they had this choir. Then they would be invited to visit the apartments, and then they could go to these 6 different apartments as they wanted to. But they were taken, they were divided and taken each to one. And after that, they could move freely. They could also visit the doctor's office, and he would try to, from a medical point of view, to explain this Tyresias syndrome, which the children here had. You maybe noticed that they all had black eyes, like their eyes were totally black. So they were born with these eyes. And Tyresias is from the Greek mythology, a clairvoyant, fortune teller, can see into the future, and they had this kind of abilities, but they were also like autistic. And then after this, we would play sometimes 2 times a day, 5 hours. Sometimes we would play only once. But in the version where we were playing 2 times, the first group would be invited to come back in the evening for the party, and the second group would then go directly into the party. And the party was the end of every day. And it was a party with these people where you would sit at round tables, and there would be a little concert where they would sing different songs, cover versions of different songs. There was a contest where you had to make the most beautiful hat out of a paper a paper plate. There would be balloon dance, and it would be a very terrible party because the inhabitants would always end up getting too drunk. There would always break out fights, and it would always end that the doctor and the nurses would throw everybody out in a very bad mood. So this is an example of a kind of a dramaturgical structure, that you would first have this, and you would end the evening with a party that always, in one way or the other, went terribly wrong. Yes.
So, I'm sorry, how do you have a fixed duration of these 2 parts? Like 2 hours and a half?
Yes, we have the duration that this would take, I don't know, this would take maybe half an hour, the introduction, when you say, Sylvia, with the song and the PowerPoint. And then they would move around in the, there's one thing I forgot to tell about it. They would move around in the apartments, but there would also be all the time things like musical therapy for these children, a group only for women, like a group therapy, these things that the audience could also go to scheduled. And those would be at set times too, and then at a certain point the party would start.
Is there any point that the actors go out of character?
No, never. It's rule number 1. They don't ever.
Is there any point audience tries to pretend they're part of the show?
It's always so that audience suspect each other of being part of the show, but we never casted anyone from the audience, or an actor to play an audience. But sometimes they engage so much that others think that they may be actors, but they really aren't. I mean, everything really has happened in these 38 performances. Sometimes they really come with strange costumes and strange stories which they have invented, which I must say I don't so much like, because I think if you put on, when you go in to experience this, if you put on some kind of role, you put up a wall and you don't really experience it. It's more about you producing yourself. I think you get more out of it if you experience it from the point of view, what if I were in this situation? What if I would actually be a patient of this psychiatric institution? What if I would actually be a visitor in this house? How does this feel? And not I'm a secret agent of the CIA or something like this. And yeah.
Do you always do all of these in German unless you're not in Germany and then they're in English?
They're always in the language of the country we perform in. So when we performed in Bulgaria, we spoke in English, but we had servants, also actors, who would translate simultaneously for us.
So you got Bulgarian actors to do that?
Yes.
Has it ever been the case that an actor finds it difficult to break out of character at the end of the project, like he continues to?
Surprisingly, rarely, actually never. What tends to stick are tics. If you have a character and she's always doing like, that can stay a little bit. But that, it's not really in the head. But we also, like when we choose people, we also make sure as much as possible that they are emotionally stable. But it is really quite Pavlovian. We have code words. We have a lot of rules, and in a lot of rules, a lot of discipline in doing this. And I think this is the only reason why it can be so wild and random and or seem like that, is because we have all these rules and we have code word, and it means go out of character. And when people hear that, it's like ching, and it's like the hypnosis is broken. So I never experienced like this. Hello, we're not playing anymore. I've never seen it. But of course, it can be that people sometimes. What happens is like we had a fight. Like say Sylvia and me, we would have a fight. Not that concrete thing hasn't happened, but as an example, we would have a fight. I would throw coffee on you, which I actually did. And then what could happen, what then typically happens, is that she would take it personally if she was a less cool person than she is, and she would think, okay, Signa is angry with me in real life. And it would kind of, this beef would then drag into the, after the performance, these kind of things. But we have quite like a lot of, we have policies on these things that we keep it separated.
Can you tell us a bit about the spaces you use? Like, would you typically get invited, or would you scout for something specific? And where's the next place?
Yes. It typically works like this, or it always works like this, that we get an invitation from a producer, being a festival or a big theater. And we tell them, we are very privileged like that, they have to find a building for us. Then we write specifications, and we're usually very open and flexible, but certain structures need to be in order because we need to be able to live there, and we need to be able to live there for half a year and perform. So it needs to have a certain size, and it needs to have a certain patina, or patina is the wrong word, but the building has to be interesting somehow. It shouldn't be a totally new building. It shouldn't be a building which has been used a lot for art, which is known to the audience already. That's not good. So the producers then usually start scouting, which would typically be the dramaturg. And they have different buildings. It's quite hard to find buildings actually for them, but they typically offer us 1 or 2, maybe 3 buildings, and we look at them and we choose. And then we start working, and often when people see our sets, they think that everything was there, that it already looked like this, and that's hardly ever the case, that anything was there. And very often we bring the buildings to the point of looking like old and desolate, where they, like the video you saw from Hundsprocessor in the beginning, we actually, it was painted fresh and red and pink and stuff like this on the stairs, and we took everything down to beige and grey to have this effect. The buildings are very important. I think actually it's a big point. So maybe we take now the 20-minute break, and then I tell you about the buildings and what they mean afterwards. Okay, 20 minutes. question that I forgot to answer before we went on the break is where is the next show? Can you switch off the light here in front of the projection, please?
You won't see your face now.
You don't see my face?
No.
I think more. Yeah, but okay, put a little bit. But I don't want this to be too pale. Okay. Compromise. The next performance will take place next summer in Mannheim. There's a festival called Schillertage every second year, a theater festival. And it's a very interesting site because there used to be an army base for many years, like since the 50s up until now. The Benjamin Franklin village for 10,000 persons of the American army. That was abandoned some 5 years ago. And we were supposed to play there a couple of years ago, but we had to cancel this. But at that time, it was total virgin land, so it was a ghost city of 10,000, former 10,000 inhabitants, with shopping mall, with Burger King, with 2 churches, with a hospital, with a school and a high school. It was insane. 2 casinos, a cinema, and so on and so on, stadium. It's not that untouched anymore, but parts of it is, and we will be performing there, and we have a chapel and a building. And it's very interesting because it's basically in the middle of nowhere, kind of abandoned. And usually we are in cities, within a city structure, and there we are just not. And the actors now demand that we do a non-stop again. We haven't done that since 2010. And it's also a good place for it because there is really nothing to do.
It's a former American military base?
Yes.
And they just, when did they shut it down?
5 years ago.
Yeah.
They just shut down and everybody left?
Yeah, they did. And it's actually very strange because suddenly, I mean, whole Mannheim was very influenced by it, obviously.
Yeah.
And now they're just gone. And they have quite a lot of refugees in parts of it. But that's again fenced in, so they took one and then they
They have them there legally, or they're squatting?
No, they're there legally, but it's like for new arrived refugees, so they're not. It's not decided if they're allowed to stay, so they're kind of not free. So it's gated, and you can only enter through one gate, and you have to be checked all the time, and that's part of it now. And that opening is rather close to where we are going to be.
Are all your projects 6 months minimum? Or shorter?
Yeah, we usually play around 30 days, and all in all, from starting the building process until we packed everything down and left, it's half a year, approximately 5 months to half a year.
Do you have to get enough funding where, I mean, is it a thing where you're actually supposed to break even on your funding, or is it just you're getting funding from the European Union and it doesn't really matter if you make the money back or not?
Ticket sales don't have anything to do with us, or the other way around. It works like this: we are invited, and the producers put down the money. So a theater like Deutsches Schauspielhaus Hamburg, they take it from their budget. They have the money. So if they raise additional money for it, we don't have anything to do with this. And this is a very privileged position, because many theater makers of the free scene, they have to fundraise to do a project, and then they have to find someone who's interested to show this theater, and we are in the position where we're simply invited, and then we go there and they're taking care of this. It doesn't really pay off for them to show us economically, because our audience capacity is very low. So it will be between 50 to 80 people, sometimes 100 per night. It's very little compared to a performance on the big stage. So why do they do it? Because I can't speak for the theaters, but it always gains a lot of attention. It's always sold out very quickly, actually, before we start playing. And I think it's more of a, I think it's something they do for attention from the theater, for showing that they're open for this format, and not for actually making money. If you calculate what they get in on ticket sales compared to what a production like this costs, it doesn't really pay off. Yes, I think I was going to talk about buildings. Like I told before, they find buildings for us, and we have quite a practical point of view on the buildings at first. A building can be wonderful, but I have to have my crew living there also. So it has to have working toilets, it has to be heatable, it has to be water, there has to be enough place that people can sleep. But that doesn't take a lot of place. So just to give you an idea of how these actors live and work, when we were in Vienna, we had 17 women living in one room with a dog. The performance was called We Dogs, so there was of course also a dog in it. And the guys, they lived also in one room without a dog. So they are willing, the actors, they are willing to live very closely, and it is very much like a camp. But these backstage areas, of course, are necessary, as are also the basic infrastructure of the building. And then I start looking at what is the building like? How can we lead the audience? The show that you saw before with the song, and also other shows that we did recently, they were always starting in a big room, and this actually, if there isn't a big room like that, they can't start like this. So this is the structure. Is there an assembly room, or is there not? Some buildings are extremely labyrinthic, and then the audience, it's exciting to let the audience move freely, but then you also know they will get lost and they will not grasp what is there and what is not. And sometimes they are they're very strictly laid out, like our school. It's hallway, room, and it gives a totally different feeling, and people will navigate very differently in that and in another one, which is more labyrinthic and where they have to discover and go through back doors and so. I'm often asked about if I get the idea before I get the building, and I find it very difficult. I find very difficult to develop a project which is site-specific without a site. Sometimes it's necessary. With these big houses and festivals, you should know that we are invited a very long time before, typically 2-3 years before the project has to take place. And they have to actually invite us to buy the, I don't know, can you say the cat in the bag in English? I don't think so. Katzensack. Which means they invite Signa, but they don't know what they get, because I cannot think that far ahead without a building. So the process is getting a building, then getting ideas for that building, writing these ideas down, creating a rough framework, going in the building and starting creating the set, and thereby generating more ideas by being in the building. Then at some point getting all the actors there, giving them what I've created so far, getting all of them thinking and writing, gathering this, and then it all starts growing exponentially. And it will just grow and grow and grow, and the process will get very, very organic, and the more we are in the house, the more everyone is working and thinking and improvising and trying out, the more details will add to the thing. Then comes the premiere, and the premiere is always the worst of the performances. I usually say that from day 3, it's on the point where I can artistically be satisfied with it, and it develops all the time from the premiere until all the time details grow in the performance, and also the space in a way will grow, because the more life is lived in a space, the more real it becomes. Obviously dirt building up, but also things created like drawings on the walls, letters written, gifts brought by the audience, drawings made by the audience, and so on. All of this accumulates and makes the space more and more interesting. Yes. So about buildings, I think there is very much embedded in a building, and it's strange. But I often feel with getting an idea, creating a concept, that it's not something I have to develop. It's something I have to find, and it's a little bit like magical thinking. It's a little bit weird. But I always have the sense that all of this is there. It's embedded in the building, and it's embedded in the time. So I just have to wait, and I just have to see, and then it will come. And when I'm asked how do I develop an idea, I can't really say it. And sometimes it's really by coincidence. It can, for instance, be that I would find a photograph. When we arrived this time in Bulgaria, I found a photograph. Actually, Tristan did find a photograph on the street of this old grandmother, just a little portrait photo. And had I been going here to do a production in the school, I would have taken this photograph and I would have made it maybe central, or maybe not central, but I would have included it. And often it's things like this. We go often. A lot of our set is found in the trash on the street, wherever, and sometimes these things become very decisive as something in the building. I also think that if I would have to do a project here in the school, I would base things also, of course, on the history of the place, and I would take things from the files that had been left in the building. When that's being said, I don't really do reenactments of things. I do take elements, but I think it's not something that I feel then obliged to portray in a one-to-one manner. But I think that when something is there as a material, it's also important to use it. Sometimes it's also you can find other places in the city, and you can involve them, things you can see out the window, other things like pointing to other places. It's very interesting actually, because the audience, like in Sparta Augen Maria, where I showed the clip before, it was a resting place, a truck stop near the motorway was very, very central to the story. And it was very interesting because the audience would start going there, and they would start like exploring this place too. So we had the fiction in the house, and we had that place which we were talking about all the time. It was central. So the audience would actually go and they would look at this place as a piece of the fiction too.
How do you deal with giving up control on when you work with the actors? What is it for you the moment the performance actually starts? How do you deal with the fact that I know it's like a usual question for a director, but also because you're part of it, how can you differentiate with like your character and what is happening?
It's hard, actually. It's hard because like I said before, I demand very much of the actors during the workshops. I lead them. I check all the time that they are like learning the things by heart that they should. I go around when they do improvisations. I watch everything. I give them critique, and at one point I know that I just have to trust that I have managed with them to bring the thing at a point where it just runs, and then I have to let go of it. And I'm very, very nervous about that. So the last week before the premiere, I'm basically dying, and then I resignate, and I have started choosing to play characters which are pretty isolated from everything else going on. And the last one was pretty extreme. I was just chained to a corner in the furthest corner in the basement, and I really physically could not move to see anything. That's really good for me, and that's really good for the actors, because I think sometimes it's very hard for them when they see me, because they know that I will look at them with director's eyes even when I'm playing. And even if I would manage not to, they wouldn't know for sure. So that's just one way of doing it, that I really physically remove myself out of the thing. In some plays, though, where we have a lot of new actors, I don't think that's totally safe, and then I put myself in a position where I have an overview of everybody, and where I have a lot of power in my position, so that if things kind of go the wrong way, I have the power of the role, like playing, I don't know, a boss, a queen, whatever, that I can say, don't do this, do that. That doesn't go very well, doesn't go down very well with the audience, because the audience very often suspects that we're kind of a sect, and when they see me in this position, and they see violence and abuse being played out, they suspect that it's real, because I'm obviously deciding that it should be there. So that's another reason for me not doing it, and because I find these positions very stressful and very boring, basically. Which is general for our actors. I think most of us don't really like to play the persons in power, because it's very controlled and demands very much overview. About this, with the control, what is really good is that everyone is playing together, so they're very good at giving each other feedback. So I can also trust that even though I don't see things, that if some things are not working, that they will be brought up. I mean, they will give advice to each other. Sometimes I don't hear about it at all. Or if there's a problem, that people will come to me and say, we can't figure this out. It's not balanced the way it's playing in this part. And so, yes.
Do you have any assistants?
I do.
Delegated?
Yeah, I do have assistants. It varies a little bit from show to show. I have an assistant in the set design. In the last show, Hunde, I had a co-director. I've had that also in one other show, but I don't always. I often get a dramaturg from the theaters. That sometimes works and often not. Right now I was talking with them in Mannheim, and I told them that now I have realized when it works and when it doesn't, and it only works if they're there all the time. So this is not the condition. Yeah, then I have my husband, of course, and he helps me with everything, but he's mostly on multimedia design. He has assistant technicians, and so there are director's assistant, the production assistants, people sitting and dealing with the contracts and the text being written or the text being proofwritten, my bad German, and all of this. So yeah, I do. And it varies, and some of them are interns often.
You had this very first video that you showed us, done in this vein of this famous film, The Russian Ark, kind of, all one take. Is this something that you did before you opened as a tool for yourself, or something that was done for promotion, or is it something you do normally? Does it help you, or is it?
No, we did it during the playing days. We did it at night, so it was after 6 hours of playing. We would then record during the night, and we always do that. So it's developed by our photographer and my husband. They always develop some often very ambitious film project that then is done parallelly to the playing.
Is the purpose for like public consumption, for promoting the attendance, or is it for you to watch it as a director and to get some feedback about that? Or
It's to preserve it somehow, because we can't preserve script or anything. So we try to take as many photos as possible and to make a footage that maybe does not document it, because I think we can't do that, but to preserve something. We also do a lot of sound recordings, and we preserve artifacts, things being written and created during. But to be honest, a lot of it I don't look at it after. I find it often uncomfortable. I also don't go back to buildings where we played. So, did you have a question, or was it just a relaxed hand? It was just a relaxed hand.
We don't see a lot of audience members actually.
No, because they're always dressed ugly unless we put them in some clothes, which we sometimes do, and we have a problem of rights when we show it.
Do they sign some kind of a declaration that it's all their responsibility or something like that?
In a few cases they have done so, and also we try to give them some kind of. We always do that in character, but we try to explain to them a few things to their own safety. But they often don't really listen that much to it. You're welcome to still ask questions. You just have to look shortly in my notes, because I've been jumping a little bit back and forth.
I would like to ask you from personal point of view, what is the meaning for you to do such kind of work? I mean, what kind of pleasure it gives you, or why do you do such kind of work?
Do you mean why do I do theater, or why do I work
No,
with this format,
such kind
or
of, like,
these themes?
Different reality, let's say, some kind of, you actually, for me, you recreate some kind of reality. Or I'm just asking do you have any, I don't know, what kind of pleasure it gives you, or what gives you such kind of work?
I think it's. I think this format is. It has a lot of potential for making people reflect, because it is it's simulating experiences which are very close to real, or there is an expression. It's called realer than real, or it's closer than close. It's possible in these frameworks to experience an intimacy, to also, as an audience, this happens very often, to tell things, to act out things that you don't do in your everyday life. Also, sometimes things which are not very nice. It's possible to see yourself react to things which you're not normally exposed to, but which you know exist in the world. And to test out in a way, how do I react? How do I relate? Am I courageous? Am I not courageous? Do I care? Don't I? And so on and so on. And I think this is not possible in the same way if you are in the passive role of a conventional theater spectator. And therefore, I think the format has a lot of potential. It doesn't mean that just by using this format that it will work for everybody and that it would automatically happen. There are a lot of things when I started working, I saw there was potential, but that I didn't know. Because one thing is to have like a dense frame story, a fictional framework, a very detailed set, and all this. But you also have to have a, how can I say, hyper awareness of the audience. You have to have a lot of knowledge about communication. You have to be able to allow space for the audience to be there and to venture, but never to be too comfortable, never to be too safe, but also not so unsafe that he will close, that he will not be able to react, that he will build too much protection wall to really engage. So our actors, they need to be able to sense a group dynamic. They need to be able to read a person, to read the body language, to read the mood of the person. They need to be able to deactivate defense mechanisms, and basically they need to be able to manipulate, to take the audience into positions where they can see themselves doing and experiencing things that they wouldn't normally. This, I think, is important, and I also think, theater as such, conventional theater. I've been asked often, what's wrong with theater? Why is it that you want to change it? I don't even come from a theater background. I didn't have any idea of theater. I didn't even think about me creating theater when I started doing what I do. It's fine, but it's not it's not necessarily my cup of tea. I don't quite understand that you have people, live people, and you are yourself there and they're there, but you put them in the dark, out there, and then you pretend that they're not there. It's a little bit what the fuck, because that's cinema, right? And that was created like this before we had cinema. And then they start in the theater, and they start, okay, so we have to make it interactive, because otherwise it's just like cinema. And then they start doing interaction where it's like they just treat everybody like a mass, and then it's like, oh, now we make everybody say la 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 la, or we talk, or we choose one random person and we talk to that person and we say to that person whatever something that we would have said to any person sitting on that place. It doesn't make big difference, and there I think it's a lot of things that about the situation of audience and performers sharing a moment that doesn't really make sense. That there is much more to it, but that doesn't mean I want to revolutionize and change theater as such. It can be done, and I'm also not saying that I can't enjoy a conventional piece. I can go and I can see Romeo and Juliet, and it's also fine, but I don't do Romeo and Juliet like this because I think there's more to it, or there would be for me. Yes, and also on the question, it's not just pleasure. I don't think, I think I could think of more pleasurable things to do. Definitely. I don't think I will stop. I've thought about it many times, but I think that art needs to move the spectator. Spectator is the wrong word. I think you understand why, but move the audience out of the comfort zone, because nothing much happens if you always stay in there. And in order to do that, you yourself as a performer, and now you've seen a lot of pictures, and I don't exactly know which ones you've seen because it's facing this way, but I think you can see that the actors, in order to bring the audience out of the comfort zone, they have to go pretty far out of it themselves. That makes sense, because it gives a certain kind of pleasure when you see that you're really doing something with people and that they're having a strong reaction. When you see that people are traveling from city to city to see our work, or they write us, and this, that it really makes a difference, and sometimes it's very interesting thoughts that the pieces have provoked. And that's nice in a way, but it's not a glorious life. We don't earn a lot of money, and there's also a lot of the work that is about like dragging heavy moving boxes and painting walls and stuff like this.
So you have sets and you have costumes when they're full sets, and you have costumes, but do you also have like background music and lighting like you would have in a conventional type of cinema, or is it just completely immersive? If there's music, it's just because somebody turned on the radio or something?
It's very different. With some, it's really only that there are record players, for instance, and tape recorders, and the sound that's created like this. The last show was like that. It was really only natural sound. Then we did another piece before that in Denmark, and it was where the audience would be, there would be patients in a psychiatric ward, and the whole thing was very dystopian scenario where we imagined that the financial crisis had really brought Europe to its knees, actually it was before the refugee crisis and all this really broke loose. So actually it's a little bit scary because a lot of the things we set up is actually what's now really happening. But that combined with the pandemic where everyone was getting this disease that would lead to them being psychotic. And they would have delusions, and these delusions would have a lot in common. And there we used this hidden sound and also like things in the light, like light starting flickering at certain points, to create the illusion by the audience that they would have a psychosis. Also, the actors would learn to speak with words falling out from the sentences and these things which are kind of artificial. And there we also had this super detailed master plan, like that the audience would never understand that it was there, but that we would always move at certain points and then like by coincidence bump into an audience and get that audience in there. And so it was very, we had like tons of scripts for this. It's the only time I've done it. It worked, but it was very like, if you just skipped 1 minute, the whole clockwork would kind of.
But the script is more technical and not like verbal
Yeah,
lines. Of
no,
the
it was technical with a lot of different numbers and symbols, and
cues and things.
everybody knows like, okay, and at that point I have to go out that door because then that other person has taken these 3 audiences here, so every audience had a number, and we knew then from this super long plan where every single person was. And then we knew from the cues in the music, and now it's getting psychotic, and this is the psychotic hour, and this is the pre-psychotic hour, and now my words fall out. And so it was for me an experiment to try to really plan a lot.
Almost like long form cinema.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Do you want to see a
Can you
film from that?
Well, can you show us maybe some example of these documents, what you use to prepare? Just to, if
I
it's
don't know.
easy, if not, I don't know. Just
I'll show you the film, and then I will, and then I'll think about if the other thing is easy.
Är det någon serie?
Nej, Vimeo. Okay, this is in English. No, it's not from the start. Just
Good evening, dear new patients, and welcome to the Laguna. My name is Dr. Elisabetta Wächter. Me and my husband, we've been running this facility for more than 7 years now. I'm aware of the fact that most of you are very anxious, having been diagnosed with 3P, as you have. It's a very serious diagnosis, and many of you are probably still struggling in trying to come to terms with your disease. But by coming here tonight, you're showing us that you are still capable of taking some decisions that are very important. Decisions regarding your health and well-being. So you put your by here tonight that important step in not being the P has step. So very cells that important did patients. But
methods that you before others practices. Master the STOPP method. It is all about creating an overview, isolating thought and emotion, drawing a white line around every emotion or thought, almost making them objects that you can view from all sides. And you will ask yourself, is this valid or invalid? Is this fact or opinion? Is this or intuition? You fly own mind. You'll ask, helpful situation? Is it pattern thought? What else situation? Always practice works. Practice works. Because we think it's good for your body, but also because it's good for your mind and your soul. So this is not only about being physically in your body, but also mentally. Now you will find the top of the ball. This will automatically result in your back getting straightened and your feet getting rounded. Now this is of course a metaphor, but I want you to imagine that there is a tree growing all the way from your lower back, through your spine, and ending on the top of your head. Now please roll your shoulder blades into a nice position and then let go, so you have a straightened yet comfortable position in your back. And carefully bounce and down. I want you to make this energy go down. Make this energy down. Carefully, not too busy. Keep breathing and keep maintaining this straight position in your back. Now lift your right foot and do this. And take the same into your head, like this. Now for your foot, please lift. Do like this, and take the same into your hand, like good. Ground your feet, breathe, you're doing really great. You, please now carefully to your rooms. Thank you.
Alright, this way. Please come with me. Don't be anxious. Come. This way, please. Don't have all day. Please take a seat right here. As I said, please take a seat. I know it can be very overwhelming being here, but trust me, you are at a safe place. Alright? And in order to get better, you have to accept your illness. Otherwise, we can't help you. Dr. Peter, shortly, questions have. Alright?
So, yeah. So this is still a little bit of a rough cut. It's not entirely finished. It's not entirely finished. But I think you could see that here it was a little bit trying to here document what the audience would encounter. But of course it's very different still because there would be very long conversations. Creating in the audience the experience of what it's like, how overwhelming it is to be hospitalized in a closed psychiatric ward, losing grip of reality, things not really making much sense anymore. Also a 5-hour performance.
5 hours?
Yes.
It's got to be stressful for an audience member.
It is quite, yes.
Can I ask you, in terms of the audience, because you give them such freedom to participate and get immersed in the whole thing, do you somehow capture some sort of feedback? Do you care about what they thought about the show at all?
Yes, of course, because we do it for the audience. So that's actually the only thing that's important. Otherwise we should just do it for ourselves. In order to find out what they think, we do after every project, not after every night of course, because many will come back, but after each project we do an audience talk, where the audience are invited to ask us and also all the actors questions. And these audience talks are very popular. There will always come a lot of people and they will have very many questions. Like I said before, it's not about everybody feeling great, having fun and enjoying it. Of course, I'm happy if they appreciate the work, but I think that part of it really also is that they will feel uncomfortable about certain things. And sometimes their criticism is rather sharp. Like, how can you take responsibility for triggering certain things? You don't know what the members of audience have of traumas in their own life. They come in there, they see violence, they see maybe sexual assault, things are very close. You don't know what you trigger in them. And my response to this is that I invented none of these things. These things are in the world and we cannot shelter ourselves from them, but we don't harm the audience as such. And going into our works, of course, it's possible to inform yourself if you are dealing with some kind of trauma, and I think you know that these pieces that these pieces are not easy, but we are in this film I just showed you. It's about also a Europe that's breaking down and where the borders are closed and so on. It's not very far-fetched actually, and these are the kinds of reality that we are dealing with, and that hurts, or it should hurt, and maybe it doesn't because we're still too damn privileged. But all of these things, all these mechanisms, they are very much at play. Also, often very close to us. In our own political systems, in our own countries, violence is being carried out. Like, say, Denmark. It's a nation in war, for instance, and that in itself should be hurtful. And I don't think that as an artist I should protect my audience from experiencing this in my work.
Do you have a minimum age cutoff for the audience?
Yes, 16.
And you said that the first movie that we saw was based on, the performance was based on the process.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a common way to work for you, to have something as basis, a fiction or something, a structure that you borrow?
No, it isn't. That was actually the first one, and of course it's only a little part of it that you can
recognize.
Yeah, I mean, I took everything I could from the book. I tried every person that was mentioned in the book. I tried to put in the play, but you know, when you're doing that many hours and that many days, it's not all in the book. And of course, there are many things that were changed. We also did Pasolini's Salo as a non-stop performance, 4 weeks. It's actually based on a book by Marquis de Sade. It's very explicit, very violent thing. We did in 2010, our last non-stop thing. We did Club Inferno, which was based on Dante's Inferno. And then I don't know, I don't think we've done anything more based on literature as such. Although, of course, we find things, very often actors then find things that they somehow use directly or indirectly.
Or different things that you use as a common frame, like a book, because it can be also something else.
Yeah, it can. Like this last performance we did, called Wir Hunde, Us Dogs. We all learned a lot about animal psychology, about dog training, and then we had these books that we were all reading for this performance where I just showed you the footage. We all had to know what is schizophrenia, what is psychosis, how do these things work, and then we were watching these films about these things, and that would be our common reference, you know, learning how to play these characters.
There was a question earlier about maybe the tools you use to plan all this stuff, because it's a lot of complicated logistics.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Yeah, if I would show you I'm not sure I have access, then I would have to look for it, and that takes time.
Then just explain.
Yeah, because the problem is that I have a new computer and it's not all on it. But I can explain a little bit about it. Good. So we have the practical guidelines. We have 2 books. So we have the practical guidelines, and it's very much just structuring how to live together in this commune kind of living. Because if you live together, right, in a collective, it will take time for it all to work. We need it to work very quickly, and we need it to work very smoothly. So this is it's all really boring rules, from using the toilet brush to keeping your deadlines and the sleeping times and everything. It's practical guidelines, also about the practical work. And then we have the general instructions for actors. And that would line up everything, like how do you deal with the audience, different situations. When audience, for instance, how do you deal with audience that get drunk? How do you deal with audience that get a rage and start destroying things? How do you deal with audience that would try to break fiction? how do you react if a situation seems chaotic, and these things, and there would be like listed up, and this we're going through. Then there are documents created which we also use in every production. I've started this in recent years, like basics about neuro-linguistic programming, about body language, about these things. So these are general. Then there are documents about our code words. We have different code words that we can, in emergency situations, use to communicate to each other, and making sure that it's understood that the problem is real and not fictional, that it has to be solved. These things. Then there are production-specific things, like the master plan I was telling you about before. It's like the traffic of audience, how are they moved, how is the audience flow, when is who supposed to be where. And of course all the basic things like the character biographies, the general frame story, and then again I will take example from the last performance. We Dogs, or Us Dogs, I think it was called in English, where there would, for instance, be a whole document, 5 pages, about what is the sexuality of a person who is a dog born in a human body, so that everyone would relate to this. There would be what commands do you use if you want a dog to do this, because of course you have in a closed community, everyone would use the same word, also the same terms. So these terms, that would be again a production-specific thing.
So these are just a bunch of discrete documents that you've written in some text format, and then you make everybody read them, or you distribute them somehow, or?
It's not visible for the audience.
Not for the audience, for the actors and
for
the
the
crew.
actors, yes. So
you're just writing a bunch of text documents, and then you just email them out, or how do you deal with that?
We always work. We always have a Facebook group in every production, actually several. So it works. I don't know if this is interesting for you. I'll tell you anyway. Every production has a Facebook group, and it's very practical because then we share everything. So we share the files there, and we print them, and everybody has a book to write notes in, and everybody has a briefcase for all the papers printed. Then the actors, when they live in families, say there is a Kibusinski family, they could then, will sometimes, create a Facebook group for them, where they share things.
A closed group. A closed group.
A secret group. And then others could have other Facebook groups. There could be one for, then we always have different research teams, like, or creative teams. So if there is, for instance, a chorus or a music is being composed for a show, then they would share it there. Or we have a group, they are researching in certain things. In the project called Söhne und Söhne in Hamburg, the second last show, there was a lot of statistics that needed to be created, composed of real knowledge of sizes of countries, and it was about this firm which was all over the world, and then they had to calculate how many franchises this firm would have in the different countries and how they would be connected. So one group creates this, a group of 5 people, and they work on this also in a Facebook group. So they create this, and then when it's finished, it comes to the entire group. And the music composing group, it's all actors. They come then, when they've created this music and created the notes and everything, then they present that to the group. So you have to imagine that there are all these branches of people working on different aspects of the performance.
And you're kind of just using Facebook to organize this.
We are using Facebook. We tried with the Yahoo group, and it worked really badly. People couldn't figure out how to use it. So now we are using Facebook, and that works very well. And our actors, they then also stay connected through this production groups afterwards. So.
So the first thing is install internet access in the building and Wi-Fi.
Oh yes, it's absolutely crucial to have internet access. And they and then I should maybe also say about our actors, it's very nice thing because they keep very they stay very connected, so it stays kind of a community. also between and after the productions. And we're meeting up every year for the annual barbecue in our headquarters, and they will then also some of them after a production they will keep on actually this fiction in some way, like if the project allows it. So the project doesn't necessarily finish when the project finishes.
What's your instruction on the audience trying to break fiction?
There is in the pseudoscience of communication manipulation, there is a term called plowing. It's also in the so-called pickup artist thing, which is about seducing. You probably heard about it, the game, and so it's guys doing this professionally seducing women. It's very entertaining and useful and immoral. And there is the term plowing, and it means hearing something and then filtering that into hearing something else, but doing this without a blink of an eye and keep on talking. So this is the best technique, but there are of course many different ones, and when there are more actors in the room, another one can also, everyone has to be hyper aware of course all the time during a performance what's going on. Another one can also in that immediate moment drop a glass on the floor, and then you create a momentum and you jump to the next. Or you hear something and you are they say, so how long have you been performing? They ask in a show where they were singing in the beginning. And so yeah, I really like singing, and since the doctor Mittag started making these musical things, I really like to go on stage, blah. You know, then you are answering from the point of view of the performer. Then there are also things like, so who is Signa? What is she playing? Then they're not allowed to say Signa. I don't know who Signa is, of course, because then you heard that forbidden name already 3 times. So then you use plowing, and so there are a lot of tricks to this, but the main point is you stay in character no matter what you do, and you don't give room to this which takes the fiction off the track. And I don't think audience, they don't do it because they want to destroy it. Of course there are some that want to destroy it, but most of them they just don't get it in the beginning, and then when they find out they cannot break the fiction, then they stop trying. But of course there are some that want to break it because it's a little bit like, okay, is this valid? Can it really hold water? And then there is this notion that, or this idea, if it's breakable, it's not worth anything, which is funny because then every theater would be worth nothing, because you can certainly also destroy a Hamlet on stage.
And if they persist on breaking it?
Some do, it's rare, but some do. And also I think sometimes when situations are uncomfortable, maybe it's a natural reaction, doesn't happen often, but then they start screaming, you're just a stupid actor, I know you're just acting. These things, yeah.
And you have a code word, and what might happen? Can you take him out?
We can throw people out. We do it rarely, but sometimes we do. And that is not so much because we can't deal with it, but more because of course people destroy it for the other audience when they keep behaving like this. And it's senseless if they keep insisting on breaking it.
But still in character.
Still in character, everything in character. Yeah, I can't think of any moment where we've broken fiction. I'm not saying maybe some actors have done it, or I know of incidents where some actors have done it, but it's something that I disapprove of very much and don't allow. And this staying in character, actually, it's more difficult to go. People often say, but isn't it difficult to stay in character all the time? And most of our actors would say no, it's more difficult going out, and therefore also most of our actors prefer a non-stop performance to a performance where you have to go in character every evening and out again, because that's the heart, and then in, and it's always, you always have to overcome some strange thing when you go in. and it always feels a little bit when you go out. So it's not just that you can suddenly fall out by accident, actually, or I don't think it feels like this. Can I just see what time it is? Okay, so we have something like 10 minutes. So do you have any do you have anything in particular that you would like me to explain about in this last 10 minutes?
I would like to ask, at what extent do you depend on the actor's person in writing his particular character, or in creating the whole thing?
A lot.
Like,
a lot.
what expertise does it have? Does he have stuff like that?
I do a lot when I engage new people in the projects. I try also to find out what experience they have from life. So it's very important if someone has been a nurse or working in a bar or whatever, taking care of horses, if the person is able to tap dance, all kinds of things can be important. And everything when you improvise is actually you. So people always ask this, not always, sometimes ask this question, but how much of this character is you? And it's very difficult to ask, because where else could you get it from? What comes out of you, it has to be somewhere in there. So I think no matter what, it's always from them. And they have to carry a lot of responsibility for what they perform, and that's all in that person. So there's a lot of trust there, and also because I cannot watch them when they perform. I can see what they write, I can listen to their ideas, I can see during the improvisation rehearsals what they come up with. But basically I cannot change how they think. So when I create a character for them, basically I'm giving them an idea, I'm giving them a frame, but they have to feel it. They have to make it come alive and make all the details.
Do you put many restrictions on actors helping other actors, because there's such a community?
No. I don't think so. I just try to make them understand. I just try to make them understand the artistical intention. And like, for instance, the language they speak, that they try to understand the atmosphere of it all, so that they will also use the language that is coherent with the kind of milieu that we are trying to create, for instance. Restriction would typically be something like to stay in the room where they are, and not like, often new actors, they want to experience everything. That's for the audience. They have to sit and they have to do certain things. They're practical things that needs to be carried out. So they can't just like go on an adventure trip through the thing. They have to be aware of the audience. They have to basically create this, so they have to build their character in a way, and that can sometimes be rather tiresome. And then I put on them during the rehearsals, read their stuff, learn their things, keep the time, be disciplined, don't come late, and when they play, never go out of character, always be kind to the group, don't be messy, don't lose your papers, all these things, yeah? So it's a regulated camp. It's not so disobedient. It's not so disobedient during the work, because 4 weeks is very little time, very, very little time. So there needs to be a lot of focus. There needs to be a lot of discipline, and there needs to be trust, yeah, and there needs to be drive. And if everything is like lost in lost papers, and people coming too late and not reading their things and not knowing the background stories, it wouldn't be possible to make it in this 4 weeks. So these restrictions, it's not restrictions, but it's very demanding, and I think there I'm quite demanding as a director, and I have to be. I wasn't always, and that had consequences. And I'm very much a perfectionist, and I hate it when something has potential of being really good, and then it falls flat because somebody stands over because he can't remember the name of the fellow character.
How competitive is it to get a role? I mean, usually how many people do you have auditioning for one part?
It's they're not auditioning for a part because I write the part when they're taken. The last time it's very different. It's very different. The last time we had I think 130 applications and we took 14, but that was a lot. Usually it's not that many.
I noticed that from looking at the photographs here that it seems like a lot of the set design and stuff and the costumes seem to be very non-modern. You've got a lot of tube televisions and reel-to-reel tape recorders. Is that something that's just because we're looking at these, or is there ever, do you ever go for a very like modern sort of slick look, or is it?
I don't, but it's not always equally old-fashioned, but it's always kind of a little bit from another time, even though you can't say where, or it's somehow poor, it's somehow a little bit.
Is that based on your sort of like visual preference, or is it more that it's easier to get those props and because they're discarded and stuff?
It would be very expensive to have a set full of flat screens and all this, but it is also my preference. Yes.
Because you don't see people with cell phones and shiny suits.
No, I mean we have mobile phones sometimes, but then it's more like the cheap. If there's even a smartphone, it would be a cheap like pink Huawei or whatever they're called.
And the physicality, the physical approach. Do you have like the same way that you are working on the text and is the physicality appearing through the improvisation, or do you have also like a way of working through the physicality of the actors? Because it's quite physical from the videos that.
It is. It is. And the last project, it was rather special because people had to be dogs, and I thought that was going to be difficult, but it wasn't. People were very human beings, obviously more dog-like than you would think. The actors, I don't know if it's the actors who are particularly attracted to our work, but they seem to be very ready, I'd even say eager, to play very physical. So it's rather, I think it's rather that I sometimes have to say you don't need it so much. I even did performances where I say don't do this at all. Don't get naked, don't get sexual, don't get violent, don't do it. But the way that it works is that if people want to do these scenes, it should always be initiated by the victim. So if there's a victim, say there's rape, there's violence, there's whatever, it always has to come from the victim, never from the perpetrator. And it's always within the safe structure of code words. Also, there's a lot of speculation about the sexual scenes in our works. There isn't any real sex in our work. It just looks very much like it. There is, however, there is a closeness of bodies. There is real violence. There is because you can't do stage fright. It looks very stupid in the close. There is real urine. There is real kissing. There is probably going much further than things that you would see on stage, but there is also a lot of it which is tricks.
Do you try to control the audiences how they pass through the set so that they don't like move to an area that you wouldn't want them in?
Areas that we don't want them in are locked.
So if they come to a room, they're free to move around anywhere in that room?
Yes, they are, but in the way that if you would visit me at home, you are free to move around in the room, you know?
Yeah.
So if you just start rampaging through the room and doing things that you wouldn't do when visiting something, you can count on having a reaction which is coherent with that. like, excuse me, you're a visitor here, why are you going through my drawers?
Right. But it seems like also one of the reasons you have to make whatever violence you had actually real, because you can't control the person's camera, because you don't know where they're
exactly.
going to stand, so
you can't.
like fake hit somebody.
No, but what I try to teach my audience, my actors, is that, and this is very difficult, actually, but I try to teach them that they always have to be aware where the audience has positioned themselves, or even to place them when, like, welcome to my home, place them there, and then know when they're speaking, okay, I also have one sitting over here, and if they're creating, say, a scene where something sexual which involves a trick is going on, they're very aware who can see that this is maybe not really.
Does that ever fail?
I don't hope so, but probably. Yeah.
Do you control about how many people you have in a certain, how many audience members you have in a certain area?
Yes.
Otherwise it gets out of control.
Yes, and if they move freely, that's always a challenge, because you can't, like, if you take them from one place to another, it's easy. But otherwise, you have to have all these strategies. If we suddenly see that 20 people gather in this part, who is then responsible for breaking that up, and what you say in order to get them with you, and this is something, actually, this is what I have nightmares about. We call it Fleischrand. It's like meatloaf in English when that happens, and it's when you really need to break it. Also, what you need to break is also when the people start like, I saw the last Signa piece, or have you seen that performance in Volksbühne, or this actor was also on that show. That's very bad, because that will drag also other audience into it. So it's not just when you have a lot of people there, it's also just if 2 people start like this, the scene is destroyed, the atmosphere for everybody else. So people, they need to like snatch in, break that, and split up.
So is part of that designing just like how the chairs are lined up in a room, so that you can kind of, without them recognizing it cognitively, that they're gonna not go where you don't really want them to go?
Exactly.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
it's like clever set design that doesn't look fake, but it should.
Exactly. And the actors have to know, okay, it's good if I sit in that chair, because then I have that thing behind me, say, covered with a picture of my mother, and they see that, so they are going to ask at one point about that, plus they can all see me from there, there, and there.
But don't move the couch over here, otherwise you'll have a problem. Yeah, okay. Cool.
So, any final questions? Because I think we are reaching the finishing time.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah. Okay. But then thanks for asking so many questions, and I'll be around for a couple of days. So if you have any more, you are always welcome to approach me. And I would also like to make advertisement for our webpage. It's signa.dk for Denmark. There are a lot of videos there and other things, and there's a lot of text also. There's also the frequently asked questions section and so on. So and you can also subscribe to our newsletter, and then you will be informed about things. And see you around at the camp.